Okay, live. Um, this is a very off the cuff thing. I didn't plan this out. It was an idea that come to head, and I was like, "Oh, this is something I've wanted to talk about for a bit." So I'll just go off the tough, off the cuff, and talk about it. Video's titled "You Ain't Telling Mandem How to Trap the Streets." Now, what that means to middle class communists, because people who have experience on the streets are going to be people who are mandem, who can speak to people about that, and they know they ain't telling people. I know I ain't telling people who are in the same class as me, especially considering that most of them are going to have more experience than even I have, how to deal with that environment, how to survive it, and how to pull through. And I ain't going to be able to go and tell them that. So, biggest problem we have, and not only do they think they can go and tell people how to do it, but they think that they know what's right for these people entirely. They think that they're going to go down there, and the common thing I hear is, "Whoa, why won't you proletarianize out the lumpen proletariat?" I have a fun thing to tell people: lumpen proletarians are proletarianized. They are proletarians. Like, it is the oh yeah, first for death to great. Well, yeah, well, fucking I got ding dong, the witch is dead anniversary. But nonetheless, these people think that they're all gonna go tell people how to do it. It's not how it works. You ain't telling Mandem how to do it. And it really revolves around in this big issue where people who are labor aristocrats, mind you, people who aren't proletarian, they are not proletarian, they are labor aristocrat, the aristocracy of labor, their relationship to the system has changed, are telling people who are in a proletarianized position, albeit disenfranchised, that their position that is proletarian is somehow therefore lesser. Hola. The This is somewhat quite ironic because the position that the labor aristocracy has been in, that it isn't proletarian, has been a problematic one for revolution, especially in the post-stage position where people's guards have been a bit down and they've taken over multiple societies. Oh man, it'll set him off on a right tiz was. We'll see him appear in fucking comments at some point sooner or another. But the fucking what's it? These people all lumpen are not proletarian and are scum. Well, some lumpen aren't proletarian. There are lumpen petit bourgeoisie, lumpen labor aristocrat. Lumpen proletarian is a specific descriptor. The term lumpen should never be used on its own because typically that means an entire end of society. Lumpen, in the modernized context, it means disenfranchised. It's a whole sector of society. You can be any class and be lumpen, being lumpenized. The what default's doing is using a shitty definitive made by Marx that if anyone had their head screwed on half correct would turn around and go, yeah, well, that's a bit fucking stupid. He even uses the word proletarian, but then says it's declassed. Okay, but why would it be specifically proletarian and then you involve people who fit a denominator of bourgeois into it? It was a complete wishy-washy waste of crap. And they're mixing this, that, and the other. But I'm not getting on the distinctions specifically. I'm getting on the issue of communists in the middle class who were all laborists because they got no experience even in the proletariat no more than in the lumpen proletariat, and think that the logic around struggle, around organizing, around this, that, and the other is going to these groups, treating them like morons, thinking they're going to be the be-all, end-all, they're going to organize them. And the one I hear people tell me all the time, proletarianize yourself out the lumpen, proletarianize yourself out the lumpen. The lumpen are closer to the real world proletariat than the first world proletariat, the third world proletariat. Um, we are in a more proletarianized position by canter. And you ain't telling me that fucking this system of stripped down labor is going to be fornicating that process much more, especially considering what this disintegrates the connectivity of the first world proletariat to being proletarian in many retrospects would be their class position and their ties to the global structure of hierarchy and their functions within society as a proletarian if they are of that very slim proletariat we have, because you have two different denominators. You have those who are strictly been aristocratized into jobs that have always been designed by within the capitalist system to fit the jobs of an aristocratic laborer. And then you have the bourgeoisified proletarian sector, which makes up the majority of the proletariat. This creates a large, chunky middle class. These middle class communists are not very extinct. Caleb keeps saying lumpen proletariat are stormtroopers for fascism. Fucking, we also got people who keep incorrectly calling the trucker convoy people lumpen as well. Cough, Trav, cough. Wait, Trav called the fucking the trucker convoy lumpen. They're just a bunch of aristocrats. What the fuck are you on? Trav really hates the lumpen shit. I don't get what his jargon is, but what do you expect from a Krushtevite? Krushtevites aren't even Marxists. They can quote the fucking books all they want. They're not Marxists. Krushtevites are at best social democrats, which are just fascists anyway, but otherwise they end up being fascists in a position where they can manipulate a socialist system to their aim. Neo-feudalists. That's a long discussion to be had at another day, but neo-feudalism is a very complicated beast that doesn't just form in the typical Italian fascist, Nazi, German Nazism archetypes. There is more to it. Trav said it was full of petty bourgeois and lumpen. It's full of petty bourgeois. I don't know what the lumpen aspect is. I'll have to be filled in on that. You know, there's a thing with class analysis, Trav, where you have to actually break things down and get into detail. If you just shit things out of your ass sideways, it don't make sense. It's just a way of doing the whole thing, because he's done this before, where they try and coop the petty bourgeoisie to the lumpen. This is a common ML, if you can even call them that at that point. If they're disenfranchising the most radical sector of the first world, I don't know how Marxist you can even throw a bone in their direction. To coop the petty bourgeoisie and the lumpen together like they actually belong in the same camp. On the point of stormtroopers, anyone in an oppressed group could become a fucking, someone who's working for a fascist organization as a fucking ground trooper. But that doesn't make it the lumpen proletariat are. That is ridiculous. Anyone who could be hired for that position are. And typically, in a lot of these positions, they have to be organized by people of a higher class position. That would be like me turning around and saying that all proletarians are soldiers that commit war crimes, because soldiers typically are working class. You see how fucking insane of a statement that is? Lunacy. But because it's of a disenfranchised group, they're allowed to do it and get away with it. And no one pushes back. Everyone just goes along. Yeah, it's similar to what Marx said. Well, Marx is fucking wrong. How are you going to accept someone is wrong if someone sounds similar to what they said, you're just going to go along with it anyway, uncritically, undialectically? I remember that Santuccio once said, the mastery of materialism comes with its practical use in reality, not just quoting books. I think that's what he said. I need to read that stuff more. Sounds like an absolutely sound quote to me. It is absolutely what comes in the practical use of reality. The actual definitive for working out theory and moving things forward is praxis, theory, praxis. It must always start and end in reality. Otherwise, you're a fucking feckless dreamer that's never going to succeed. But it's, you ain't going down to the streets and telling mandem how it is. That's not what a good communist does. So what does a good communist do in a situation? How does someone connect with mandem on the street? Having fun, are we? They're bloody doing some cutting. But, okay, the thing that one must do, define it about books, pussy, one of my favorite little screenshots. It was a comment I put in on one of Caleb's streams when he was cycling through books to define social. I was like, hey, define it about books, pussy. what a good communist does is that they don't go down to streets and tell this, that, and the other what to do, tell them how to trap the road. No, what they do is they go down and they listen and they listen and they learn and they engage and they speak to people's problems to how they are. You don't come in with the big scary language down their throat instantly. You don't try and jump in like you know it better than they do and start fucking manhandling how they run the streets. You hear them out, you hear what they have to say, and then you bring it forward, and you bring something forward from what you're learning from them. But you, especially, because remember, this is specifically to middle class communists who don't have experience in this world. You don't have experience in this world, and everyone's gonna fucking know it. People on the streets know when other people on the streets have less experience than them. Of course they're gonna smell someone out who has none at all. And you're not gonna be listened to because no one wants to hear someone who knows nothing tell them how it is. Once again, even if you have experience on the streets, if you don't have enough for someone else, they ain't even gonna listen to you tell them how it is because they're gonna know you don't know it as well as they do. You ain't seen as much as they have. You ain't tasted as much, smelt as much, felt as much as they have. Experience is the only pathway to genuine knowledge. And if you're not willing to taste the experiences of other people, you might as well be shoving your head up your fucking ass. And that's how it'll come across to them, mandem. You're just shoving your head up your ass and barking the same commands. And as I always tell people when I'm speaking to them, any one of these people you find on the streets in the day and you ain't even given the 2 seconds a day to have a conversation with, you're seeing them as trash. You give them people the same accessibility to literature, the same capacity to read it, the same capacity to engage in it that you have, because you exist in a world where not only do you have a better education, but the equipment to look at things and research things and engage with materials has always been greatly available to you, whether it be the day of textbooks to the day of smartphones. That if you do have disabilities, mind you, more than 70% of the lower class, specifically the homeless, more than 70% of the homeless population is disabled. And a lot of those disabilities are learning-centric. You have the ability to get past, let's say, a learning disability that affects reading because you can afford the capacity to listen to it. Well, mandem ain't got the technology for that because they are on the streets. They're more bothered about next food, next water, next fucking drugs to get themselves through the night, get themselves through the day. You are in a position that gives you a greater accessibility that's not based on your intelligence. And your experience is greatly limited. So when you give the accessibility to communist literature, to revolutionary literature, to sociological and psychological literature and analytical literature that looks at the human mind and the way we interact with people, those people with more experience of the world, more experience of social engagement, more experience with the worst that can come in first world society, they will command them books with greater knowledge, understand them much greater than anyone do you know from the labor aristocracy, because experience is already a greater pathway to genuine knowledge. That understanding of genuine knowledge will be elevated when they have the expansive knowledge of fucking the bourgeois medium of fucking literature, where they have all this information. But when we get to access that as someone who's limited to that as an organic intellectual, you can command that so greatly because you are then mixing the greatness of literature, knowledge, and its refinements, and its refinement of our understanding of experience. Because, of course, it comes from experience down the line. That's the only way we ever know anything. But you're never going to understand that unless you have experience in it. So those people who have experience in living in fucking capitalism, which the lower class you are, the more experience you have in it. That's why the third world are literally the most experienced and are unchallenged in that realm by fucking anyone. Third world working class, the most experienced people on the planet in this system. You have a greater experience in it. You are going to have a greater understanding of that topic because that genuine knowledge allows you to tap into the greater knowledge that has been encapsulated by the collection of other people's genuine knowledge. Because you're not going to understand the genuine knowledge of a piece of work if you don't share that genuine knowledge. So when you go down to the lumpen proletariat and you condescend to them because you think that you've read a few books and you now know their world better than them, you are full of shit and you'll be smelt out for it before you even get through your first fucking sentence. And you won't connect to anyone, you won't teach anyone. You'll be told to fuck off as quick as you can fucking speak the words, I'm a communist and I'm here to say squat. Or you need to proletarianize, or this, that, and the other, rah this, rah that. Suck your mum. Love the Adidas geezer. Looks like you're ready to go to a dunk party. Just donning the right garms, innit? Oh, what's it? It certainly ain't going about in no suit. It reminds me of the great rewrite of a British song. There's a British song called My Old Man's a Dustman. He wears his dustman's hat, he wears cool blimey trousers, and he lives in a council flat. The IRA got a hold of that one, oh baby. My old man's a provo, with a beret and a gun. I haven't seen him lately. He's always on the run. He looks so damn well trendy in those shades and DM boots. Far cooler than those other dads in ties and shirts and suits. I just really want to play that song for Caleb, but... this is a great bit as well. It's like, my old dad's got me worried. I think he's going soft. There's shit tons of fertilizer stored up in our loft. I asked me dad if he's become a father for a pun. He said, no, don't be an idiot. Pass the coffee grinder, son. It's fucking amazing. But nah. I'm actually wearing. I can't show you. They're all the way down there. Maybe. Wearing the full Adidas. You see, all garmed up. Fucking repping it. This is my. This is gonna sound proper chavvy. Those are my sleeping Adidas. I don't typically wear them to go out. They're just for sleeping in. I'm wearing my hoodie because it's cold in the house. Dripping. Yeah, because it's all melting in it. We do not drip here, and we certainly will not nay. There we go. I did it for you. Do not prosecute me for copyright. And it's not like this thing stops at the issue of the street. Because mandem don't just go and tell, they don't, these middle class people, they don't just go and tell people in the street how it is they're going to operate. They think they can do it to the third world as well, in the second world. They think that they know. They know whether People's War will work or not. They know whether fucking, revolution will happen in the third world or the first or not, rather than actually following what's going on in the third world and listening to third world people and looking at their struggles. Their aim is to, no. We know because, insert Eurocentric phrases and statements here. And they think they can go and manhandle every struggle and tell them, no, you shouldn't be doing this now. You've got to wait. We saw this even with fucking, we saw this with the... Just unplug me mic. We saw this with the second world nations during fucking Cold War, when they started to go social imperialist, like when the Soviet Union went social imperialist, and we saw this further down the line with China. They go around telling places, whether or not they should do X, Y, and Z. 1 second, someone's ringing my bell. Looks like it's fucking bailiff or something. Fuck that. Yeah. Fucking bailiffs ain't getting a penny out of me. Um, this thing goes worldwide, like fucking. But I sort of wanted to get into it from a position that I'm experienced in, because these people don't just do it to people who aren't communists of the street, because they treat them all like morons. Like, that's the biggest thing about it. Is it's not like they're just going and they're trying to be like adding to people's already developed knowledge of the system, and trying to entice them with things that connect the dots. These people are treating them like they're absolute morons, and like there's an innate criminality to them as well. That's always a part of their mindset. And they do this with lumpen communists as well. They want to tell lumpen proletarian communists, as they also like to do with third world communists and socialists in general as well. This doesn't just go to specifically communists. Um, they like to go and treat them like any idea they have is moronic, try and tell them what to do. But then once you start developing, in like uh, once you start putting yourself out there and showing how much greater you understand things, to how they're letting you on, and even a lot of times, if not most of the time, how much more you can understand the same shit they're trying to understand without even having to have put in as much of the reading. Reading is incredibly important, but it varies how much you actually have to do to fucking get the point before it borders on just repeating itself to people. And that varies on experience. The most experienced people ain't gonna have to sit there reading the thing all the time. Think of it like an instruction manual to build something. Someone who's a really, really, really experienced engineer will whip through constructing that thing like they barely glanced at the manual, and will go through it like that. Someone who hasn't fucking done engineering at all in their life are gonna have to keep looking back at the manual all the fucking time, and keep making sure that they've done it right, and keep over checking and keep rechecking. That's the different world we're dealing with here. Two different worlds. It's like taking fucking someone who's done metal fabrication all his life, and someone who's just turned fucking 13 and is only fucking and doesn't even know what fucking steel properly is, and that there's fucking like hundreds of thousands of different types of it, and then telling them to make this specific type of carbonized steel that uses titanic alloys and shit. Straight over their heads. um Actively opposing China is actively opposing revolution and third world struggles. Yeah, I'm supposed to support it because it has a red flag. Yeah, exactly. It also defaults to the point where you get a lot of these groups who will push you into supporting imperialism. But I'm even speaking of people who'll be anti-China. Like, I'm speaking of specific individual communists and their actions, not the actions of nations so much. But yeah, you are right with China. And it is a lot of these groups who are the most anti-lumpen, who are supportive of the Dengist position. I mean, me and Comrade Net were speaking about it. Net brought up Summit, and it was the thing I said when I first come into MRN, and I started criticizing any form of interaction with Dengists. I said it's sort of like this. There's a sort of troika of bullshit that's going on. I can't remember what the original thing was. It was like the three bastards that are going to cause us the most trouble. And that's and I'm just speaking from Marxists, being infected by red brown fascist types, and those whom are bourgeois roaders. And that's that you get um and that's that you get I lost what I was fucking saying. Does anyone remember what I was just last saying? Because I got messages and I was reading them and I lost track of what I was saying. Right, brain fog. No, are we lost? Are we lost? I think we've lost it. Dengoids. Ah, yes, 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 yes. So it's Dengists, um, Nazbols, and Trotskyists. That's the that's the three main sort of groupings that you get with this stuff. And it's sort of quite interesting because um fucking um I need to get the Reed Trotsky picture from what's it, from Skype, because it is on there somewhere. Oh, the Germans are talking about Unabomber. The funny. The Legion of Doom, as they are called. The Troika of fucking tyranny. Oh, I'm reusing the US one. That stinks. But these bastards, which Caleb Moffman happens to be all three, I fucking don't know whether that was something that just fucking came out of there, because I wasn't even calling him a Nazbol at the time. Um, my problem with Caleb Moppin was that he just came across like a fascist. I didn't really care to call anyone a Nazbol. Like, I was always of the position that Jason held, that Nazbols are one of two things: someone who's still a kid in the brain and really likes tanks, or they are just a Nazi and they're trying to clean up their image. That is the two tones of Nazbol. Um, and fucking Trotskyism breeds a type of a fascism that tries to be ignorant to the fact it's fascism. Like, they got to be aware somewhere that what they're pushing isn't fucking socialism deep in their brains. But this gets into like a lot of what Engels gets into with petty bourgeois socialism. Oh, they've put the smoke up their own ass that what they're building is socialism, because what they're building is, the whole like socialism for the capitalists bullshit meme, which doesn't actually exist. This a load of crap, because it's not even the same sort of operative thing. That was a thing that Engels first said, but not about the capitalists. He said it about the aristocracy, the petty bourgeoisie, and the labor aristocracy again, because labor aristocracy is a class that's sort of an underling class to the petty bourgeoisie, because the petty bourgeoisie is the feudal aristocracy turned into the bourgeois aristocracy, and the labor aristocracy is their little pets. Um, that they seek to corrupt the socialist movement to create a system where they either at least have more power over capitalism, or, I mean, in the case of the feudal anarchists, which there's some of the Maoists and lumpen proletarian anarchists all come to agree on, that they weren't really anarchists, they were fucking neo-feudalists, as Engels points out. Engels rarely uses the word anarchist. He typically calls them petty bourgeois socialists, and looks at things from an angle that I find more applicable to more than just anarchism. Trotskyism, fucking is heavily included in this petty bourgeois socialism, where they use the lie of the want for socialism to perpetuate one or two things: the continuation of capitalism under greater amounts of petty bourgeois management, like we see in what's it, national syndicalism, and eventually onwards then corporatism and fascism. Or you see them corrupt to a more sort of okay, we've gotten rid of the ruling class and made the petty bourgeoisie the ruling class, like uh what's it, post 1957 Soviet Union, when they have the coup and they change the system into dictatorship of the whole people. That's what bourgeois countries tell people. What does that mean? Okay, whichever class has the dominant position is now ruling, because they have made it into that competitive style system, and that became the petty bourgeoisie. They dominated the society and reinstituted large scale commodity production by turning the military industrial complex that they had very aptly created out of the end of World War II, when the MLs wanted to actually lower the amount of military production in the Soviet Union. They geared that complex for production of profit. What makes someone a commodity a commodity producer, is its connection to a market, it being something that's designed to sell a product, make a profit. So if you're selling at flat rate, like let's say, okay, they had to make sure they covered the costs. If you sold to cover the costs, you're not really making a sale, are you? You're just selling at rate. That is not how a functional market works. A functional market makes profit, and the Soviet Union geared themselves around making profit, because everyone thinks that the argument is just between give it out or sell it. I mean, they could do it at rate if it's that important to them, but given that they're the superpower in the argument, I imagine not. Um, you know, you're supposed to be eliminating commodity production. So when you do that and you create commodity production, I hope people understand that large-scale commodity production is one of the core aspects of a bourgeois economy, not of a socialist one. Actually, as Stalin and Lenin both said, socialism requires the elimination of commodity production in most of its outlets. Stalin's a little more lenient and says it can exist in small, tiny decrees in the early stages of socialism. But the military-industrial complex making a profit is not small-scale commodity production. I hope people are aware of that. The socialism for the rich, capitalism for the poor. I think that was something that Sanders crowd pushed. No, well, the idea of that is not something new. That's just social democrats. That's just their insane mentality, because they're preaching petit bourgeois socialism. They want a system where they get to be like the capitalists. I also think there's a core thing with neo-feudalism. Everything has them being the ruling class to some degree or another, whether that's in a quasi-like state with things like fascism, where they're not really the ruling class. They're just taking a larger position within the class dynamic. They're taking a larger role of responsibility. And you see it with them all. I mean, there's plenty of books get into it. Black Shirts and Reds goes on about it. During the fascist and Nazi period, they all dressed up in the most amount of gold and aristocratic, like feudal era aristocratic, like top posh nosh clothing that they could fucking get their fucking titty fingers onto. Their grubby little piss stained ends. And fucking, what's it? And sprouts himself out. That is just the fucking. That's just the process of this shit. But, you know, petty bourgeoisie constantly seek to corrupt and manipulate movements for their own class benefit. Gramsci, back in fucking 20s and the 30s, was writing in his diary. Actually, he might have been dead by the time of the 30s, but I know he was writing it in his 20s. I can't remember his death day for the life of me. About the petty bourgeoisie and the labor aristocracy, specifically the intelligentsia more than anything. And the conclusion that is sort of come up to by Gramsci is that to allow the people of this class, any retrospect, to be the leader of revolution will doom revolution to its failure, because this class will not be willing to release itself. It has to be forced. This is not an unusual sort of process in class altercation. This has happened all throughout class systems. Both the classes with power and the classes without power are in awkward positions, so they have to be forced forward. I mean, we even saw this with the peasantry into capitalism and the peasant wars that occurred out of that, and that's a lower class than the class that came into power. The proletariat is lower class than the labor aristocracy. The fact that people, rightly in the socialist development, will see that the peasants need to be proletarianized. Well, so did the labor aristocrats and the petty bourgeoisie, but no one bats an eye there. And when you point it out, people even dare to call you an ultra. That wouldn't surprise me if it was till the late 30s. He did write an awful lot while he was in prison. But they fucking, what's it? These people have a terrible track record of sabotaging revolutions, of sending us back to square one and into even more hostile environments for revolutionary struggle. And I don't think anyone would disagree that a properly Marxist, properly socialist Soviet Union still existing today would be a beneficial thing. But the labor aristocracy, the devolution of that system knocked us back. Same thing happened in China. Same thing happened in the Eastern Bloc. It's even more complicated because now you're getting into Soviet social imperialism. But you see what I'm getting at? And a lot of these problems stem from an internal contradictory issue where we have not been hard enough. That's an understatement, but we've not been hard enough on the labor aristocracy and the petty bourgeoisie. They should be fucking treated as classes that A, have to be class traitors to be a part of our struggle, and that means B, are therefore hard to fucking trust classes that shouldn't be near power, that can influence their class interests and send them back to positions of which send them back into, relapse them into following their class interests. To be a class traitor, you are going against your class interests. Class suicide is something I've only ever seen anarchists do and Maoists on the streets. That's the only people I've ever seen do it. No one wants to commit class suicide because they're afraid. They don't want to lose the gimmicks they got. They don't want to lose their livelihood in society. And you know what? Like, problem as well that we have is there ain't many organizations set up. There ain't many organizations set up that can facilitate declassification of labor aristocrats, bringing them into the lumpen proletarian struggle. And mind you, they'll still be of an aristocratic mentality for the majority of that interaction. Like, they won't be just invited in and allowed the least to the fucking place. No, you can't trust the whole class, so you can't give anyone any special rights or like over any other aristocrat. Like, oh, you're all of a sudden more trustworthy. The only thing that really levels them out is what was their experience prior. Do they have experience in a different class position? And mind you, that doesn't always negate all too much. Fuck me, we can point to the Jimothy Dore and that them dickheads. Jimmy comes from a proletarian position. Mind you, his father was a class traitor because he's a policeman, but nonetheless came from a proletarian background and was even a bricklayer at one point in his life. And he is as anti-proletariat as it can be in his operations. Yes, he pushes a proletarian message, and he speaks a language that lulls people who are of that background, because he speaks more unknowing than he is of what he's doing. But because of his petty bourgeois position, him owning his own house, yeah, it did take him fucking decades to get it. But he owns his own house. He earns fuck ton of money a year, and even more now that he's raking in all that fucking Patreon and page subscription and fucking YouTube membership, this crap, that crap, merchandise, etc. It's a fucking right little Ponzi scheme there, and that comes from those aristocratic principles come from a class position. Stalin has a quote in Anarchy of Socialism where he talks about Shoemaker. A very intricate point that he gets into that is class consciousness. And one thing that Lenin also goes on about with class consciousness isn't a thing where everyone has the same interaction on. It's very class centric. That is sort of in the name, class consciousness. The class consciousness of the proletariat is not the same as the class consciousness of the labor aristocracy. Being class conscious is not enough as a labor aristocrat, and any labor aristocrat that thinks they're all fancy just because they're class conscious might want to fucking check their shit. Labor aristocrat has to be a class traitor, and then that's not enough as well, because the lumpen proletarian criticism is that not only class treachery is, because anyone could call themselves a class traitor and talk the talk of it. involves walking the walk, uh, which will involve class, suicide. Nikita Khrushchev was proletarian in an empire of settler colonialism. If you're a member of the white proletariat in a country where 70% of the country is feudal, you might be lower class, but you are in a much more beneficial position than them. Education was required to be in a factory. Stalin didn't get into a factory until he had been to education from, from his feudal upbringing. So, like, I don't want to disseminate it because the working class of the Russian Empire differs between incredibly different groups of people. Fuck me, Trotsky is actually a petty bourgeois guy, and even I do believe even he's worked in a fucking place before, like an actual working job. So it's really, really hard to dictate where the line's drawn on people from this background, that background. Um, and so it's hard to say, but in a country that's 70%, or an empire, because it's not one country, that's 70% feudal, uh, things get quite choppy with someone like Khrushchev, and as well, his background won't just be the core source of it all. You could argue that the way in which the Soviet Union formed itself and its ignorance towards the peasants' capacity to engage into democracy, because they were very ignorant of that, and they were ignorant of when even after education had been implemented to a point where a good majority of the country had been educated, they were still ignorant to the education and intelligence of the people. They treated them like they were idiots. You could argue that an aristocratic and intelligentsia of the petty bourgeois type of environment was enforced within that sector, and that it basically gave ample place for petty bourgeois members of the party to groom proletarian and what's it, labor aristocratic sectors into a more petty bourgeois line of thinking. I mean, fucking keep. That's how the petty bourgeoisie organized the aristocracy and the proletariat anyway within first world environments. I got fucking loose hair that keeps fucking itching my nose. Um, and what's it? I mean, Stalin himself even come to notice this problem with the petty bourgeois clique of the party, that were opposing socialist implementation of the policies of implementing socialism, the nationalization, centralization, and mass organized planned um, economy. It was all being sort of slow-boated by these market socialists, if you even call someone who wants to marketize socialism a socialist. And these fuckers, as even Stalin pointed out, were predominantly of the old petty bourgeoisie of the Russian Empire. Actually, I think the focus on them, because of how much of a problem they were, was what allowed people like Stalin to miss the problem of people like Khrushchev. Khrushchev was Ukrainian, but he was from a part of Ukraine that was annexed into Russia at the time, and he's of Kievan Rus. Um, so he likely would have been identified as Russian at the time. You remember, the Ukrainian identity wasn't even acknowledged during the Russian Empire. It was Lenin that brought acknowledgement to um, Ukrainian identity in the Bolshevik Party, along with the Ukrainian struggle itself for other Ukrainian groups. But I mean, Ukrainian Bolsheviks, before they were murdered by the Black Army, were the dominant force in Ukraine. So yeah, Kievan Rus, or Kiev if you to say it Ukraine, but it's Kievan Rus. Um, the Rus are Slavs, No, sorry. I know they're Slavs. Everyone knows they're Slavs. Sorry. The Rus are Swedish originally. They come from Sweden. I think that's all I can fucking really say. Yeah, there's not really much to say without repeating myself. And JP wanted to come on and say something funny, but with how long I'm gonna be waiting, I'm gonna end up be taken away from what this is meant to be, which is supposed to be short and snappy, and I've already gone on twice as long as I should have and could have. So I will, unfortunately, end it here. Or unfortunately for JP, they'll just have to fucking write the jokes down and get them in on the next one. I mean, I gotta fucking. I might be one or two things that I do before I disappear off to hospital. Fuck petty bourgeois socialists. Fuck the petty bourgeoisie in general. Watch them bitch and moan. Yeah, but the lumpen they are evil, mafia and the lumpen proletariat are just mafioso and drug dealers. This is why I picked the fucking thing from what's it? Boris Johnson. Um, what's it? For the picture, it says Boris Johnson said the UK's poorest communities are made up of chavs, burglars, drug addicts, and losers. I guess I fit the drug addict, the loser, and the chav designation. Um, while I like burgers, I'm not a fan of burglary. That didn't work that well. Good joke. Top 10 out of 9 out of 11. There we go. I get to say 9/11 every time I do a 10 out of 10. 9/11 is better than 10 out of 10. That's how the score rating works. It goes 1 up to 10 and then 9/11. One of the writers of this piece from 2019 is last name is Bienkov. Is it a secret conspiracy? Ooh. Russiagate time. Shall we start furthering conspiracy theories, guys? Oh no. Fucking the next thing you know, they're gonna turn off the power during the winter, guys. Everyone, they're gonna hack the fucking generators or something. I don't know. I can't even remember the name of that US presenter. Who the fucking name was fucking um MSNB fucking C. It should be MSNBS, but what's it? When I went to Gettysburg, Eisenhower's house there had a special seat in the backyard for him and Khrushchev to sit and chat. So they could sit around and engage in this treaty bullshit. Well, they were chopping things up. I mean, what's it? They had a little discussion just before what's it, Khrushchev decided, or the Soviet Union, whoever decided to back out of it. But they were originally going to turn around and like sign an agreement that would have basically signed the Middle East off to America, for basically the Soviets to freely operate in a different region. Um, Given a deal like that, it was most likely somewhere in either Asia or Europe. Or Latin America, actually, as well. I didn't think about that. Because it was in the 60s. I think it was around 67. Rachel Maddow, that's the one. Fucking A. Fucking. Sometimes you wish the Russians are as powerful as they make them out to be, just so that because we know that Rachel Maddow would have been sniped by now, and that would have shut the fucking cow up. Like, my goodness, never have I ever had to deal with a news presenter who's so fucking obnoxious. Actually, that Chris A's toss pot comes pretty fucking close in mind, actually. But what's it? Um, Interesting fact: the house was literally a walk away from Camp David. I mean, even fucking Castro, for all the problems he was, and I'm certainly on the Che side of criticism of Castro. Like, I pretty hard on Castro, although I still got respect for him in a lot of retrospects. When he goes over to America, he wasn't as fucking up his own tough when he was in America. He actually went and engaged with the people and saw the people. Cenk Uygur is fucking terrible. Yeah, um, he is, he is a Karen with a news show. That's what Cenk Uygur is. Cenk Uygur is a Karen. I need to write that one down. That makes for a good clickbait title whenever Cenk Uyghur's fucking being too much of a nose that I have to ever speak about him. Cenk Uyghur, the Karen of all fucking news shows. Yeah, he's a Karen. All he ever does is just fucking go off on these like pretentious fucking self-justified rage fits where he fucking treats everyone like fucking uh, he treats everyone to this like morality that isn't very moral, that he acts like this extreme moral fucking code, and you go out of it and you fucked everything up. But yeah, it's he has the morality of a fucking half-eaten cucumber. Which, if you ask any cat, they think cucumbers are pure evil. So it's a perspective-based thing on this, but I'm saying that it's neither evil nor good. It's pathetic. And it rides on this very sort of white man's world lens where everything is all shaken through this very upper petty bourgeois lens of being able to exploit people whenever you want, and then feeling that you have the capacity to then criticize people for exploitation. Like, do everything you can to exploit anything and everything that you can, and then start getting all antsy and critical of people when they might not even be exploiting, to try and criticize them for exploitation. Double entendre stuff. It's like when you find out that the fucking uh the leadership of the CPGBML is really big on owning private property. Um, you get the oof vibe. It's like they could be a communist and they could be wanting to contribute to the organization. They shouldn't be fucking leading it. That's a fucking obvious thing. And unquestionably leading it and never changed leadership. Like, fucking hell. In a country, it's understandable that someone doing a lot of work for the people might be popular enough that they get continuously re-elected, but someone who's in a party that does nothing for anyone, what's that all about? If you're failing to do anything, you'd think people would want a new taste of fucking vinegar. They ain't gonna fucking keep drinking the same salt. Uh, But that is another reason why what's it? These aristocrats can't go around telling anybody anything because they don't even understand how to be a Marxist amongst themselves, no more than go and tell other people how it is and how to be a Marxist and how to look at the world and how to survive in the street. Oof, oof. Back up, boy, back up. Don't know what you're talking. Um, no, the labor aristocracy and pay bourgeoisie do better as librarians than they do as fucking communists. Fucking every time any of them ever end up making a channel, nine out of fucking 11 of them, and that's not me doing the 10 out of 10 thing. That's me saying 9 people out of 11 people specifically. Yeah. Um. See, I've confused everything with my really terrible line into things, but 9 people out of 11 people fucking come into this shit to fucking what's it? Go, I'm about the people who do like the YouTube channel stuff and all that. To just read you books all the time. Oh, I'm gonna read you books on the Enlightenment era written by Adam Smith. Why? Why do I need that right now in this moment? It's cool stuff to know about. Great down the line. Is it really the most important thing to bring up, or relevant enough that it could sideline the most important thing? Is it worth procrastinating on? Which that last one's definitely a no. And it's the same old shit with all the other stuff. Like it's really useful to get audiobooks down. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a big fan of S4A's channel. S4A's what's it? The private schooled aristocrat. So whether I'm a big fan of S4A himself is another question. But I'm a big fan of his channel, and I get along amicably with the guy. Except the fact that he's fucking an ignorant little shit at times. But that's just people who are fucking aristocrats on YouTube. They lose faith in responding and looking to comments a lot, and they're very selective in the way in which they attain to media. He only uses his Reddit to upload videos automatically, it seems, because I tried messaging them and got nothing. Because my Twitter's been blocked, and they blocked all my Google accounts, and I'm not giving them my fucking phone number so they can fuck off. I'm not fucking about with that. Fucking keep making a new account just to get blocked for fucking bullshit, because they got a bot that blocks you if you say anything that is remotely aggressive. Oh, and YouTube that just automatically deletes comments if you call people stupid. Can't even call people imbecilic in their activity, or that what they're saying that is wrong is from a moronic standpoint. Light insult and a lot of the time necessary. I don't like calling people stupid or belittling their intelligence, but when I'm dealing with these patsock types, it's necessary. These people are all acting like they know it all, and that they're quoting all this shit they've read. They deserve to be called stupid for fucking the same wrong. So you have to walk around the bush like a tosspot. But either way, books, great, they are important, and making audiobooks is really, really good. People who struggle with reading, it's great to be able to listen to it. I got into limitations that Lumpen proletarian people have, so a thing that I'm trying to do is stick them onto compact cassette. This is a very, very cheap cassette that's from fucking 80s, I think. Could be the 90s, but it's given the style, it feels like the 80s. 60-minute cassette, 30 minutes each side. You can stick chapter on each side pretty much for a book, like somewhere like, actually no, a chapter per side, per cassette. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up because I got chapter 1 of Black Shirts and Reds. I didn't mark down the chapter name, but I can do that anyway. There's plenty of space. Well, I don't know whether that'll show up on the camera. There you go, Mike Parenti, Black Shirts and Reds. And the reason that's got tape on it is because with tape, you've got these holes there, you pop them out, and it stops them from recording over them. I mainly only use Twitter to browse what other leftists say and follow my favorite singers. I used it. Well, I was supposed to use it for YouTube, but I rarely ever posted anything from my YouTube on it. Actually, I don't think I ever personally used it to directly upload a video unless I was sending it to someone, either on a response to a tweet or in DM. But I used it to contact people and engage with people just as myself, just speaking out there and poke at different people. I would DM or tweet different people to sort of engage with them so I can show an appreciation and tell them what I'm about and what I represent, and if they want to get involved, holla, holla, holla. But yeah, the whole idea is by sticking it on a compact cassette, you can buy a cheap player for 10, 15 quid. Actually, if you buy them in bulk, you can get them for about a fiver. You buy enough players, so the cheap, shitty. It doesn't even need to be stereo, but you can get them stereo for pretty cheap. You can get them to be a recorder. So if you leave the notches in, someone can reuse the tapes when they're done with them because you don't need them to send them back. Tapes are also cheap, and what's it? Optical formats. You need computers and disk drives for people to reformat them. If you send a device that can reformat it because it doesn't need reformatting it, you just re-record over the tape, and there is no limit to how much you can record on it. It just gets noisier and noisier every time. Um, it's a very durable format to go along with such a process, and it's cheap. 10, £15 for a player to send out with people. You buy the cassettes in a big enough bunch, you'll get them for 20, 30, 40p a pop. They don't need to be high quality. They're only recording voices. I guess you could also send like a couple of cassettes out with some communist songs on them if you really wanted to be a cool kid about it. And this very easily something to be done that could be done worldwide as well. So you could, you would send it to one place or another place. You could be topical with the music you pick rather than just sending English songs to a place because it'd be a bit rude. Or even send specifically songs if you are gonna send English songs from the nation you're sending from. Like I could send like English country communist music from the 80s to modern day. It still happens today. It goes even before the 80s, but fucking go for English country communist music or Scottish country music, Welsh country music. There's plenty of it out there. Um, Send some of that over in a cassette along with a load of cassettes with books on, and that uses audiobooks to their advantage. And it's really useful that there are these people who make these audiobook videos because I can swipe them up, and someone like S4A where they do little explanations and stuff like that somewhat is cool. It can be helpful, but the problem is that if it's not coming from the mouthpiece of a Maoist, I feel eerie. Like there's pieces that said by S4A videos where I would prefer it be corrected, and I guess you could use a mic and pause the recording and dip in if you really wanted to, or you can pause the recording every time it goes to add an addendum, get past it, shorten the recording time, and only have the book and let people criticize it on their own right, which is heavily preferable to a lot of people. But nonetheless, you get it on a medium, you get it out there. My problem isn't people doing audiobooks in general. My problem is that a lot of people come in and that's not only A, their only focus, but B, a lot of people, multiple people, different people here and there will want to get in and just want to talk about what this thing says or that thing says from this very snobby philosophical outlet that they've got their own tree uh 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 fuck it, that they're up their own tree on, where rather than breaking it down to the modern day and relating it to today and looking at, okay, how do I break this down from an analysis of how the real world functions today that people in their experience are going to relate to, because people don't have experience in the real world, and if they do, it's in capitalist realism, not reality. They instead pick obscure books that are hard to depict what the specific relevance of today is in those literature pieces, which a lot of them might still have that relevance, but it's hard to get it out there. And if you're not already making a comparison to the real world, I doubt you're going to get that descriptor out in a way that's useful to people. You are going to obfuscate it into idealism. This is where people start thinking Hegelian-like when they're using dialectics, because they've got no material inference to relate to. And if you've got no materialism in your outlet, you're not looking at material reality. You're just looking at the works specifically themselves. You will fall back into a Hegelian dialectic. Remember what differs Hegelianism to Marxism in its dialectical form of analysis is not the science behind it. The science is very much the same. Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, or to use the specific term and why I'm using the word science here, method. Science a method, almost not exactly, but almost interchangeable words, because science just means a methodology of analysis that like some of the picks up physical things in the world that we can analyze and criticize, that we're making like conclusive positions upon it. Very loose and frail method. The reason why I'm saying that is because philosophy is what differs these two things. And the philosophy of Marxism is dialectical materialism and historical materialism. And the philosophical outlet is what guides the scientific methodology. So to find something as a science is that you can physically analyze it. Philosophy, specifically in the Marxian sense, looks that philosophy must be a tool that is the science of sciences. Science is guided by philosophy. And that the philosophical direction of Marxism being materialism must mean that our methodology is directed by praxis. You need theory for praxis to achieve socialism, but praxis in and of itself is not derived from theory. Praxis is where theory itself is derived, for there would be no theory if there is no praxis, but there would be praxis if there is no theory. Yes, theory can create praxis, but it must have praxis first. And that is the core principle of Marxism. Hegelianism isn't grounded like that. Hegelianism, you can just pick up a book and start thinking abstract concepts. Like it is abstract. Hegelianism is full of this essence-based thinking. Marxism throws away that essence-based thinking of just opposite variables with no grounding in reality other than the concepts themselves having a vague relativity to two material things that have been combined into this abstract idiom. Marxism takes it into this position of, okay, we must look at the actual functionality that's going on here to ensure that the two things we're looking at have any relationship to each other to even be comparable, and B, what that relationship therefore means. Now, anything and everything can have a relationship and will relate to each other if they exist within reality. And it scales up to mass amounts to the point where you can argue everything interacts with everything because everything interacts with the universe. Checkmate, fucking Hegelians. But it scales down to absolutely everything, to the point of me pissing in a pond, to me turning fucking tap on and water coming out of it, to moving from point A to point B, and the time dilation between those 2 points, and the distance that is maneuvered between those 2 points, the fact that I'm in multiple different points before I reach the second point, asinine dialectic drivel that Engels gets into, where he's, how do we define a dialectic in the material framework? What I look at, the way I see dialectical materialism is it's a very simple, very complicated thing. I know that is a bit of a fucking contradictory labeling there, but it's simple to understand in the sense that things are based on this very trilinear sense of relativity when you think of an isolated dialectic. And that's where I'm tricking people up here. When you think of just the fact of thesis, antithesis, synthesis, dialectics is simple. It is very, very simple. Marxism, though, decides to turn it into a complicated simplicity where it's like, okay, the process of understanding that a thing relates to a thing, that is simple. The process of seeing how things relate to things is also simple, and that is an important thing that the Panthers get into on experience-based learning, and how you're not going to get people to believe that the Communist Party is for the people unless you show them through visual actions within the public domain, within the real world, fixing up roads, feeding the people, other great things like that. And I lost myself in the Panther example. Sorry, the dent in the back of my skull's playing me up. Shit, I had a really fucking good point there. This is the issue with the way I work. I just go off the cuff, so there's no like planned out script or anything like that. Even when I am a little more planned out, and what's it? Um, I'm fiddling with the cassette to deal with me nervousness. I'm a more nervous person than people might think. Which is also problematic to me and influences my brain fog. You got the brain fog, and then you got the fact that I I don't even understand half of how I engage with a lot of the stuff I engage with as a communist. So a lot of the conversations I have are off the cuff, like this is now in the moment of doing the stream in and of itself. So it becomes a awkward situation where in which when I end up forgetting something that I haven't got anything to really refer back on, I'm just sort of lost now. What is embarrassing?
You know, I'm starting.
Oh, yeah. The Caleb Maupin getting Caleb Maupin. Sorry, they're both so racist. I just get them confused with each other. Has the fucking ultraviolet has the inceloid getting angsty about delivery man Bob fucking doing his job. I still wish I didn't forget what I was on about earlier, because like that shit was pretty rad. One of these days I will have the memory. That's why we need to spread that clip everywhere. Haz is the guy who said anti-Semitism isn't core to Nazism. The Nazis are the anti-Semite types. He's pushing the whoa, but what if Strasser stuff at that point, and oof, oh, can someone insert one of Strasser's many anti-Semitic quotes, please? Because I don't think people understand that the Nazis were anti-Semitic. That was their speciality. Even fucking fascist fucking in Italy, whom they weren't pro-Jew by any means. Like they might not have had anti-Semitism on their program, but many of the Italian fascists were also anti-Semitic, and they thought Hitler was a bit much on that one and went along with it anyway because. I mean, even though Hitler was the one who looked up to Mussolini, as soon as Hitler took power, Mussolini was seen as like a the lesser guy, and then it was Mussolini looking up to Hitler. They had a weird on and off relationship going on where you just want to tell them that they need to just kiss. It's complicated. Um, hey, it puts my live stream in my suggested. I wonder if that means it'll put it in other people's suggested because I've never seen my videos in my suggested before. Um, I can't see why it would suggest my own video to me. Sort of lost the brevity to this thing. But yeah, Mandem ain't gonna be telling people how lower class people are surviving, and they ain't gonna be telling them how to do it better or how to organize it there or the other. They need to learn from us how to survive on the streets, especially those who are more experienced than me. Fucking should have waited for Lumpen Celt to be awake and dragged them on. A Lumpen Proletarian with tenfold my experience in the Lumpen Proletariat. I have to tell you, just as I'm telling you, ain't no aristocrat gonna tell you what it's like on there. Like someone like him who's been on the streets for fucking decades, like, well, on and off the streets for decades, in the lumpen proletariat for decades. mandem's fucking struggling with disability in the lumpen proletariat as well, like most of us down here are. Um, it's the evil that this system puts onto us, throws us into this rut where we do end up gathering a grander experience because of it. And through that experience, a greater knowledge of the system. That greater knowledge of the system needs to be respected. If it isn't respected by these labor aristocrats and they don't try and learn from it before they even try and engage with us, we ain't gonna listen to you. Probably gonna tell you to fuck yourself. And at the end of the day, the aristocracy has more to learn from the lumpen proletariat than the other way round, no matter what fancy books you've read. Because we're the ones with the experience in the system, especially my colonized lumpen proletarian brothers and sisters. Damn fucking straight you listen to them. Because they know it better than any of us down here. They've been through this struggle through and through. Even those who weren't in the lumpen originally still went through racism when they were in the proletariat and even in the labor aristocracy. And then when they're lumpenized, they get hit with it even harder. And nothing proletarianizes you harder than the other when you are treated as someone that is third class citizen. And you're thrown into a position where you are cornered off and sectioned off and excluded as somewhat lesser innately. That radicalizes the fuck out of you. That's why black people who rise up the first. Anytime anyone rises up in America, it's always black people. Black people and red people. Always. Always the most organized. Always the most radical. They do the most for their communities. They even, in the first place, do things for their communities. MMOs call that charity. They put in the most to struggle, and fucking A, they ended up showing how much you can get out of it if you try. Fucking CPUSA did not terrify the US, even though it had a bigger fucking membership. Did not terrify the US in the same way the Black Panthers and Black Liberation Army did. And the other black breakfast based and education based and fucking schooling what was it? They did a load of different programs, so there's no point in me listing them off differently. The community programs that were done by these both these groups, the BLA and the Black Panthers, were and the American Indian movement, were deemed as massive threats to the system. Actually, one of the aid groups that worked with the BLA and the Panthers was fucking bombed by the US. Can't even remember the name of the group for the life of me. It was bombed by the US. Whole corner block bombed. I believe the very first speech Hitler listened to when he attended a German Workers' Party meeting was titled, quote, why are we anti-Semitic, end quote. Move, that's the one. It's always good to have an American in the chat. Well, it's not, but here it is. It was in Philly. I know the story all too well. God, that'd have been something good to have fucking what's it? Have a good talk about, get Puerto Rican and African comrades from Philadelphia from that era to speak about the struggle around them times, because that was when things were fucking really heating up. Um, my big my big Stalin appreciating what's it Puerto Rican comrade from Philly might know. I think he said he's from Philly. He might know some fucking the old guard. I might ask him if getting in get someone that might be able to interview in the far future. It'll have to be after fucking doing that. Oh no 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 no! I don't want to shut it down. Fuck. Sorry, I'm just being a downer in Discord. Letting down JP because if I keep this going on as long as they want it to be kept going on for, fucking throat. If I keep it going on for as long as they want it going on for, what's it? It'll detract from how much I already have detracted from the original point of this stream. Um, but yeah, nada, 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 nada. Um, be good to get wider discussion on the 78-hour stream. Nah, this was meant to be a quick, less than 30-minute purpose made video where I just specifically talk on this issue and then stop, but it's turned into something else. Fucking. You know what? I think I'm awake enough to do it. I'll end this and I'll do a Titty Thunder stream and then people can come on afterwards and do whatever. But well, I'll see you very very shortly for those here who are live. um, has flagging LT taking advantage of draconian capitalist IP laws. My videos aren't monetized yet. Somehow I still also get done for copyright. I don't know. He hasn't flagged my video. I don't know. Maybe he has, and I haven't saw it yet in my thing. Let me check studio. Studio. 12. Nah, he loves me still. That's why. You gotta look out for them though, because when they fucking go off on a video, like you have like a short period of time to pull it down before they fucking give you a strike. But yeah, no, I'll catch you in a very short while. Um, red salute, douchebags. Sorry.